So when have you struggled in your training, and what did you learn from it?
I've basically struggled embracing the idea of training, period, and figuring out its value that it can bring to my own climbing. Because the best way to get good at rock climbing is to go outside and climb rock. And the best way, if traditional climbing is mainly, crack climbing and multi-pitch climbing, well, you can't really do that in a gym very well. So you have to go outside and climb cracks. And I think then once you get to a certain level, with say crack climbing, for example, the best way to then once you have the technique, that's when you can really focus on training, maybe power or something to do like a hard finger crack, so to speak.
So you were climbing a lot of 512s, trad routes, and then really started turning your focus towards the valley, kind of the classic climbs in the valley, of which many are kind of high 12s and into the 13s, right? And so is that a plateau that you hit, or how did you make that jump from 512 trad to 513 trad plus?
Yeah, basically how I made the jump was through sport climbing, and like I said early on, I kind of resisted sport climbing and bouldering because I saw myself as a staunch traditionalist and a trad climber, and I was trying to follow the path that my heroes had, the Stone Masters in California and people like Peter Croft, for example. And Peter was an interesting example because I saw him as like, my traditional climbing icon and the crack climbing endurance master, and free soloist and big link up guy and everything. And so he was who I really idolized. And it wasn't until a few years into my climbing that I learned that Peter lived in Bishop and that sport climbing was a huge part of his climbing now. And I eventually met Peter, and I actually hired him as a guide as a graduation present to myself. And we went climbing in the Owens River Gorge in Bishop, which is the first sport climbing area I'd ever went to. And it was really him, like if somebody was to turn me on to sport climbing, it was going to have to have been Peter. So it really worked out perfectly. If him, my trad climbing icon, told me to go sport climbing, of course I was going to do it. And so he really changed my perspective, and one, made me realize that it can be a lot of fun, but more importantly, it could have a lot of value in the kind of climbing I like to do most.
First of all, it's incredible that you can just hire Peter Croft to take you out for a day of rock climbing. I feel like that's now going to be on the top of a lot of people's lists of things to do.
Yeah, that should be something that people know. Any of his guidebooks, he has his personal phone number and email that you can hire him. So don't be afraid.
God, I love the rock climbing
there's
community,
nothing,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Peter Croft, and it's like you could just call him up and be like, "Hey, can you take me?"
I know. When I heard that, I was like, "Seriously, you can do that?" Because I'm not special for having gotten to climb with Peter. I paid him just like anybody else can.
All right, y'all, just a quick break in this video with Jordan to tell you about Jordan. Did you guys know that you can have Jordan Cannon as your own climbing mentor? What? This is so cool, you guys. Jordan and Shared Air are offering a 4-month mentorship program starting on March 1st so that you can take your climbing to the next level. What's going on in this program? Well, it includes a masterclass, personal Zoom courses, 5 in-person clinics in Colorado, plus a private Slack channel. So you're going to have Jordan in your pocket 24/7. It is capped at just 30 climbers, so you can get all that personal attention from Jordan himself. And just for us strugglers, Jordan and Shared Air are offering a $300 discount on this incredibly unique program. Just pop over to sharedair.com, hit that link right down there to get started. Shared Air, where climbing lives. You mentioned earlier when we were talking that you've been going through the Alex Honnold boot camp, and I have no idea what that entails aside from probably going outside and doing some really long days out at Red Rock. But let's talk about like what you're doing when you're not on rock. What are you doing these days in the garage or in the gym?
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate enough in my position to be able to climb outside all the time, and so that was one thing I was nervous about when starting to look more into training. And I even hired a coach this year, my friend Simon Moore. I was afraid that as whatever trainer I talked to, that they were going to tell me that I had to, sit down in one place for a few months and train in the gym all the time, which is what I did not want to do. And thankfully, with a coach like Simon, he does a really good job of working with me and my situation. And yeah, basically I'm able to do the majority of the training that I need by climbing outside, but with a specific focus and intention. And so my biggest weaknesses are strength and power. I feel like I'm a pretty natural endurance athlete, and that's catered to a lot of the like bigger things I've done in climbing so far. And also a lot of the climbing I do is very technical and very like skill oriented, like in Yosemite, you can learn a lot of tricks, and you don't have to necessarily be that like have that much strength or power to do what other people might consider hard in Yosemite. And so he's basically just forced me to seek out things that challenge me in other ways. So things where you can't fake it with technique, where you actually need raw strength and power, which is generally steeper climbing, where...
So yeah, what does that look like on the rock? Is it just you're getting onto really steep stuff where you can't throw hand jams and you can't use a lot of feet, you got to carry tension through it, you got to use your fingers, or are there exercises that he's giving you that you're just happening to do on rock rather than on a board?
Yeah, both. So with outside climbing right now, I'm focusing on steeper bouldering, and particularly like crimpier problems to develop better finger strength for some of the goals that I have currently, and then steep sport climbing as well to maintain endurance, but also just to develop the bigger muscle groups. I generally have like quite weak and unstable shoulders, and then I'm also bigger than a lot of Yosemite climbers who are, I look up to. And so I struggle a little bit in the steeper realm just because I'm bigger and taller and heavier than people might think.
You are pretty tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot, 170 pounds.
Oh, okay. Maybe you just look, you look super tall compared to Mark Hudon.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody looks tall compared to Mark. He's 5'1" on a good day.